This one kid in our first rock camp, she was so small, we had to put a pillow on her shoulder and then hold the bass, and she played it. She was awesome, right? And the parents are like, oh my gosh! You know?
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Economic and Community Development Meeting. Today is January 10th, 2022, and I'd like to welcome anyone that's joining us this afternoon. First item on the agenda after call of order is the roll call. Rhonda, will you please call the roll?
Chair Troutner, are you present?
Here.
Councilmember Larmer?
Here.
Councilmember Michaud?
Here.
Wonderful, thank you so much. Next up is the approval of the agenda. Are there any changes from council members or staff?
No changes to the order, Madam Chair, but we do have a little bit of improvement.
Perfect. With that, we will move on to approval of the minutes. These are the minutes from the November 8th, 2021 meeting. Are there any questions?
Nope.
All right, if I could please have a motion.
So moved.
Second?
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the minutes pass. So we have 3 items on the agenda this afternoon. None of them require action, but they are great informational presentations. And first up is the Downtown Kent Business Activity. So I'd like to welcome our Director, Kurt Hansen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, welcome to the first committee meeting in 2022, and as such, I guess it's already got a curveball for us. So the first agenda item on here, we had John Hinds from Kent Station. We do have Gaila Haas from KDP, so thank you for being here. John ended up having to jump into the COVID protocols, unfortunately, so he will not be with us this afternoon. That said, it is an item that I wanted to bring forward for you guys. It's a fun item, it's info only, and we are going to try and schedule him as fast as we can. And honestly, the way the calendar is filling up, I'm not sure that's going to be February, but we'll get him back with us as soon as we possibly can on this one. That said, I do want to let you know on give you a little bit of the context why I invited him initially, and of course we wanted to partner with Gaila as well on the KDP version of the same. John and I catch up quarterly, and it's not a very fun topic, but as of late, but we do a leasing update. It's kind of what we call it, and we'll catch up for lunch, and we'll talk about all things Kent Station, and typically from him, he wants an update on permitting. So we did that at the end of the year, and he had a stat that I thought committee would love to hear, and again, he's not here, but I'm going to do my best to represent it. Kent Station is enjoying occupancy, so effectively the tenants in there, the highest occupancy since opening in 2005. So, we all bring our own kind of lens to this, but looking at what we've endured over the last, 1.5 years with pandemic and all of the other things going on, that was a remarkable stat that I thought we should share. Again, I'm going to reserve some of the update so John can come back as soon as he's able, but one of the highlights I think I'd like to share, and I'm actually going to give you 2, but one of them that was remarkable for me was Daiso. Daiso is a Japanese variety store, and if you guys haven't heard of them, you will soon, because Daiso's coming into Kent Station at I don't know the address, but the former Coldwater Creek location. So the long, dark, kind of sad tenants space there just next to Dilettante. It will be a huge addition. If you don't know Daiso, I'm going to call them a variety store, kind of a discount variety store. It has everything from, it's homewares, kitchen items, office supplies, toys, kind of fun stuff. I mentioned it at ELT this morning that we were doing this afternoon, and I gave the story of always needing a pair of shoelaces almost nonstop for me, and right now it's tough to find. So that is something that you should be able to find at Daiso. I will not live that down if they don't have shoelaces now, but I'm almost certain that they do. And so it is a regional draw. There is one at Federal Way Commons, I think they call it, is the closest one, but they're starting to pop up in the region. Kent Station is going to be a wonderful fit for that because they're going to have things that appeal to just about everybody. So great addition. Another one that John wanted to mention this afternoon was Multi-Care Indigo is opening. I think it was just around 3,000 square feet of an urgent care facility. So that's another kind of big highlight for us, is we're going to have that coming into Kent Station. Now, again, I'm not going to mention dates and opening and things like that, because that is truly something that Kent Station, John and Cynthia like to kind of control that and release that. But for all I know, their website might have that too. So it's unfortunate that John's not here with us this afternoon, but wanted to give the committee kind of the fun stuff too, a little bit with a leasing update like that. I am very pleased to announce that Gaila is here, able to join us in person, which I'm very, very happy you're able to do that. Dawns on me now that I introed this as the first meeting in 2022, and I did not welcome the change in chair that we have. So, Tony, Councilmember Troutner, I'm very pleased that you have agreed to join us as the new chair to Economic Community Development Committee. So welcome aboard as your first gavel swinging into this chair person role. So thank you. With that, I'm going to welcome Gaila up and jump in.
Thank you. Thank you, Kurt. Hello, everybody. Thank you for letting me come and give you a little update on what's going on in downtown. We've been very busy and excited for this year. So I'll just, I won't take up too much of your time, but I'll just kind of breeze through a few things that we have downtown that are pretty exciting. I'll start with the space lease updates. As you are aware, there are some vacancy properties in downtown Kent that are actually starting to fill up. So we have the space that used to be the old Spiro's on First Avenue. You guys are probably aware of that. It's been vacant for a very long time. It's this very cool space. We've been trying really hard to help that property owner find the right tenant. And he finally has found a tenant who has signed a lease, and that's called, the company is called Game Castle. And it will be a combination of a retail store with a gaming, I don't know if that's what they're calling it, but an area where people can actually come and actively play the board games and get together and socialize. They won't have food service or anything like that, but they will be promoting the downtown businesses that do provide service to come in and bring food and whatnot. So we're really looking forward to them coming in. They are in permit right now. The property owner is submitted for permits, and we're hoping that they can get some traction on that here in the next week or so, I understand. And the exciting thing about this Game Castle is they are another cool nerd business, and I'll talk a little bit more about the cool nerd businesses that we have. And I always want to say cool nerd businesses because when I talked to the business today, I said, you know, cool nerd business, because I never know if somebody's thinking I'm saying something that they don't think is positive.
Nerds are cool these days.
It is totally cool. Yeah, it's
Nerds
totally
are
cool. Kent Teaching and Toys, you may be aware that business left at the end of last year. And I have received information today from the property owner that they're, excuse me, in negotiation with a potential tenant. I don't want to take it too far, mostly because they're still negotiating with that, but it seems to be pretty serious. And if this particular tenant comes in, it will probably be some sort of a restaurant, maybe social members only, pub bar type thing. So we'll see about that. And so that's kind of the updates. There's another rumor tossing around another potential place downtown, but again, I don't want to really get any hopes up until I hear a little bit more information. And the next big thing is our cool nerd party. And I also have some of these I'll leave here for you so you can take these home with you. The Cool Nerd Party, or the Meeker Street Nerd Party, is something that's been started by a couple of our businesses, specifically Retro Emporium and Page Turner Books. They've done it for, I think, a year or two. And this past year, they approached KDP and said, hey, you know, could you maybe help us a little bit with this and kind of expand and grow it? So we're pretty excited about that because we're starting to see a little bit of more traction. So we've got all sorts of things happening with that. And as I had mentioned, the Game Castle that is signed on for the First Avenue space, they likely won't be ready by the time Nerd Party is, but I did invite them to participate, and they're pretty excited about it. So whether they come with a table to just introduce people to their future business, or whether they just come as a spectator and as another business. So there'll be some contests. We've got sweet themes and Pied Piper, Big Woos, all of those businesses kind of involved as different stops along that Nerd Party route, some artists and authors. And so it should be pretty fun. And that's going to be on February 26th, Saturday. A few things we've got coming for our events. We've got a beer and cider ale trail, or we call it the Cider and Ale Trail, coming in March. We've got some wine walks coming back. I have talked with public health at length about how does this work in the middle, in the middle of where we're at with pandemic, and we've got all the bases covered. So I think we're pretty clear and pretty good on that. So hopefully people will feel comfortable with that. We will be checking for, vaccines and things like that to try to keep our community as safe as possible. The Cajun Festival we have in August, that's moving forward. So we've got some pretty cool things coming down the pike with that. We're still in a lot of planning effort for that one. And of course, maybe a second nerd party in September. We'll see how this one goes. And Street of Treats. I don't know if any of you have came to that, but last year we had over 800 registrations. And about 600 people came. But it's a pretty cool thing since the first time it happened was only 300. So that's growing. That's really great. And of course, let's see what else. We have our regular, our ongoing mission of supporting small businesses as their needs arise, and whether that's through permitting and helping opening businesses, connect them to resources. We have hired a new social media part-time contractor who's going to be starting here very soon. And we're hoping that that person can help amplify our downtown and promote our businesses in a more structured way. I mean, I think we do a pretty good job, but this person is really more of an expert at it. So we're hoping that will really help improve our audience and engagement with our social. And of course, just working on our Main Street work through our committees, and they're doing an awesome job. We have also been working with a collaboration effort with Project Feast and Fair Start. They're collaborating, discussing proposal on a shared space. And that space that has been identified is the old Cafe on 4th, right across here in the corner. And KDP sent a letter advocating for this proposed use to the county and got a very positive reaction from that. So we've had a meeting with the King County Facilities Director, and we'll be moving towards a on-site meeting with him this week. But the proposal is for Project Feast to have a space to do barista training and expand their operations. So they won't be doing a kitchen there, but it'll be more of a coffee barista training, walk-up coffee to go, which is super exciting and needed downtown. And then the other part of that space would be taken by Fair Start, which I'm sure you're aware of their mission. And they're looking, to increase their support in food security and their presence in the South King County area. So we hope that that effort will continue. The on-site visit to understand, the King County wants to understand a little bit more about the proposed space and how it's worked out. And Bill has been a great resource in working through that as well for using the use of Darren, the contractor that has been for, this permitting and drafting up things like that. So, I mean, that's pretty much all I really have right now. I mean, we're super excited about this year and, continuing to put COVID in our rearview mirror. Does anybody have any questions?
Any questions for Gaila?
Not a question, just a comment. I'm super excited about the nerd party.
Yeah, great.
That is, I think it's really cool, and I think it sets us up to be sort of, for that sort of destination theme here. And I'm excited about the tabletop gaming too, because I know that that's getting to be really popular and really cool. So
Yeah.
I have friends that will travel to go play tabletop games at different places. Yeah.
Yeah,
So.
I know. I think that's going to be really neat.
Great job.
Yeah, I think it'll be a great complement business downtown.
Yep.
Gaila, just one quick question, because I know we're always looking for people to serve on our board. We have really great committees that work together to put on a lot of these different events. How can someone get involved if they're interested?
They can reach out to us, info@kentdowntown.org, and we would love to hear more from people. We have a lot of things that are happening downtown that I think people would really embrace and be happy to be part of. But they can visit our website, kentdowntownwa.com, get in contact with us. They can look at our committees, our mission, our board, all of the events that we have going on, and ways to get involved. So thank you for asking.
Thank you.
All right.
Wonderful.
And I'll
Thank you
just
so
leave
much.
these here. If anybody, and Council Larimer, maybe you want the poster. It's all yours.
Thank you so much, Gaila. All right, we are going to move on to the next item in our agenda, which is an update on build-out of Trusted Community Partners Network. And I'd like to welcome Michelle Wilmot.
Thank you, Councilmember Troutner. Nice to see all of you. We're looking forward to working with you all this year. I gave a presentation to, I believe it was a council workshop on this Trusted Community Partner Network last month, or gosh, time goes by so quickly. But there's been some movement on this since I last presented this information to you, so I wanted to give you a good update on what's going on and give you an opportunity to ask some more in-depth questions as we move forward with this project. This is a really great regional effort that I think is going to be a really great help to our smallest business owners here in Kent and across the region. You've seen this slide before, but it just sort of illustrates the challenge with how do you direct someone who needs business help and business advice and to which organization. All of these organizations do great things, and they each have their own different expertise, and they have different language capabilities and the like. And what Bill and I have done over this last couple of years is really zero in on some of the expertise that these organizations offer and their language capabilities. So what's happening right now is an effort being led by the Port of Seattle and the Seattle Metropolitan Chamber of Commerce. And you might wonder what is going on with the Seattle Metropolitan Chamber and the Port of Seattle, and why is Kent so involved in this? And I wanted just to, you ladies probably know this, but for those who might not know, the Port of Seattle has a major economic development division, and they are responsible for really spurring on our regional economy. They do a lot more things besides the airport and the cruise ship terminal and the like. They are really focused on supporting financially different efforts across the region to help build family wage jobs and to make sure our economy is thriving. And they've been huge, tremendous partners with us during this COVID pandemic in convening all of our counterparts in economic development across the region so we can share resources and best practices on how we can best support our business community. They provide funding to cities all across King County as well, the Port of Seattle grant program. I think you've heard us talk about the amount of money that they've provided to us. I think it's about $60,000 a year, which we leverage and build great programs. That's one of the things the Port does in working with us. The other, with the Seattle Metropolitan Chamber of Commerce, the Seattle Chamber is known as King County's Associate Development Organization, and it is funded in part by the state Department of Commerce to provide to provide support to further our region's economic development goals. So it is when we think of a chamber, in this particular instance, this chamber is not focused solely on its membership in the city of Seattle. They have a regional role to play as King County's ADO. And what they have sort of put under that program is this REACH King County, which stands for Retention, Expansion, and Collaboration Hub. And what that group does is they work with all 39 cities in King County under this collaboration umbrella. And what we all do with them is certainly work to collaborate, same with what we do at the Port in sharing best practices and how we can coordinate the services that we provide. But they are also very focused on supporting our businesses, in particular our smallest businesses who are BIPOC-owned businesses. So they bring financial support and extra feet on the ground to help in our regional economic development efforts. So I just wanted to give a little bit of a description about what these two organizations do and why we are involved with them, because they are doing some regional supports, and we are a large city and have, in fact, impressed some people at these organizations with some of the work we've done. So I'll move on to that in a little bit. No secret, well, the numbers that I'm going to show you here, King County, across the county, we've had 1,000 restaurants and small businesses close over the last couple of years, and a massive reduction in the workforce in some of our leisure and hospitality employment. Luckily, while this is tough for King County-wide, Kent, we haven't seen those sorts of numbers here, which is great. Unfortunately, we don't have a really great way to track that at this time, which is why we're really glad to have Gaila here speaking about what's going on, and then with John with Kent Station, just talk a little bit more. But this is a region-wide challenge, obviously, and this trusted partner network is set up to address some of these challenges and help some of these business owners who are most severely impacted. And we know that those that have really been hurt the worst are those who are toughest to reach. They might not those business owners might not speak English as their first language. They're not reading typical media outlets where you can get information about the different grants and different business supports that are available. So what this partner network is looking to do is set up navigators, and what they are looking to do is replicate the work that we did during our COVID grants program, where we worked with partners here in the community. So I'll use a couple of examples. For instance, the India Association of Washington helped us really reach out to those Punjabi-speaking business owners here in Kent, which are prevalent, and they can reach people that just absolutely that I can't, whether it be an English language barrier or whether it be the types of information that they get their news from. Those folks are on the ground, they know where people are, and they are already trusted in that community. So if I reach out to the India Association of Washington, which they actually have changed their name now, but they are a statewide organization that happens to be based right here. So we have tremendous reach when we work with people in the community who can reach people where they are. Same with World Relief or the Iraqi Community Center or the Ukrainian Community Center, etc. We have a lot of these different organizations here in Kent that they're based here. They have access to the folks in those communities that we're trying to reach, and they're trusted already on the ground. What we've done is really work to build relationships with those folks. So when we have different resources that are available, I can reach out to them and say, hey, I need some help sharing this information. This is what we did to make certain that our toughest to reach business owners were aware of our grant program during the very beginning of COVID. And so much so that we had, 58% of the folks that we were able to give grants out were actually business owners or people of color. So we felt working with a network like this really helped us broaden our reach. We know these folks are not necessarily reading all our social media or even reading the Kent Reporter for that matter, or looking at our website. So we really have to rely on these people. Anyway, this is how the program is being set up this way to amplify what we've done, only set it up region-wide, especially given that some of these organizations are not just Kent service providers. They reach people all across the county and certainly across the state. There can be all kinds of different questions here. I don't need to go through all of these, but the navigators themselves are looking at everything from non-traditional lending for business loans, certainly grants, looking at different services, whether it's workforce training or how do you get your business moving online. A lot of folks found out that, we had to make a lot of decisions on the fly when COVID first hit. So we really learned that there are a lot of different challenges that you need a lot of different players to support to be able to address those. So we're looking at building out this network. You're going to ask me, okay, so how do we know who does what? And I'll get to that in a minute. One of the things that we were able to do in using some money from the Port of Seattle was to build out a small business resource landscape directory. And what we did was we worked with the National Development Council, who actually went and interviewed these different nonprofits and business support systems here in the region and talked to them about, okay, what is it specifically that you do? What kinds of support do you provide? And what language capabilities do you have? And now we have that all in a directory, which we have not just saving it for ourselves, but we have shared that with the folks that are deemed these service providers here in the region. So we can look and see, all right, if somebody needs some specific service, now we can identify more closely the type of organization that can actually provide that sort of service. The benefits of this is, it's not just the language, it's having culturally knowledgeable advisors too. I mean, I have learned that translation is critical, but it is not the only way to best reach people. So working with different folks in the community who are on the ground where people are at is the best way we can reach these different business owners in the community. One of the benefits of this too is this helps us to eliminate some overlap and definitely leverage the supports that are out in the region as far as if I'm going to need something translated, let's say for an Iraqi community business owner, if we're working with an organization like the Iraqi Community Center, and then Bill and I are talking on the phone with our colleagues over in Burien, and they have a similar thing. Well, we've already completed some of the work and completed some of the communication materials and what have you. So this is just helping prevent some overlap in working with folks on the ground and helping us make certain that we're communicating with people in a relevant and in a culturally appropriate way. So looking at how this program would work, the port and the Seattle Chamber are asking all of the cities in King County to participate in this. And you'll see on here, you'll see some dollar amounts, and those dollar figures are determined sort of on a per capita basis, and it's very similar to how the port divvies out its grants that it does for economic development on an annual basis. It's all on a per capita basis. So what we're looking at here is, for Kent specifically, it's based on population. You can see that they're looking at asking us for $50,000 to contribute to the establishment of this program. And you'll wonder, well, what is that money for? There are a couple of different things. One is the administration of the program and all the contracting with all of these different organizations that would be deemed community partners. And then it's also getting those funds to those community partners in the community to help supplement the work that they're doing. We can't ask these community navigators to do more without giving them support. We've heard this over and over again that, yeah, they want to help, but they need staff to help reach these different organizations. We can use ARPA funding to help pay for this, and I believe Bill in our budget request included this dollar figure in our budget for this year. And we could actually use Port of Seattle funds for this. The Port and the Seattle Chamber are also planning to contribute heavily into this program. What we're looking to see is about a $900,000 average for what this would cost on an annual basis to support these navigation services. So looking at what this Trusted Community Partner Network would do, obviously language and geography considerations are pretty critical. We can expand the reach's reach, which is sort of that's the reach, the network that I mentioned, which is sort of under the umbrella of the Seattle Chamber. We have scope of service examples. We've made some budget assumptions. We're looking at what this would take to scale this program, because not everybody is ready to jump on board right now. We're looking at, okay, maybe this would be a pilot program to start. And then there's technology to support this, and I'll talk about that in just a second. And then how do we work with these different groups on a community engagement basis, as well as an implementation timeline. I've got some examples here. I'll show you what this looks like. Just for when it comes to the language and geography considerations, this you'll see the top 10 languages. Those are the top 10 languages in King County. Those are not Kent's top 10 languages according to the census. And the census was just updated with the new information. But there is some of these languages we suspect will still remain. And you can see that, I'll just read through. We know that Kent's top 10 languages, at least with the previous census, were Spanish, Punjabi, Vietnamese, Russian, Ukrainian, Tagalog, Samoan, Arabic, and Somali. So you can see there's some overlap there. Well, if King County is going to translate something into a language that is one of Kent's top languages, why would we translate it again? So during our grant program, I don't even know how many hundreds of thousands of dollars were spent on translation of all of this, because we didn't have an entity that was coordinating this work. Just a horrible example, but it's one that sticks in my mind, was one of the attestations we asked grant recipients to sign. It's a federal document, was 20 pages long, and we had to translate that for all of these different languages. People had to sign it. If we did that one time, we could have given those dollars out to business owners as opposed to translation services. Not that we didn't keep our translation services in the community the best we could. When looking at translation for our materials, we're definitely working with organizations in our community who have these language capabilities to keep those funds closest to our community as possible. But beyond geography, there's those cultural considerations that I mentioned earlier, where translation is critical, but it's not everything that we need to keep in mind. The initial partners that the Port and the Seattle Chamber are looking at are some of these organizations that absolutely provide services here. You'll see El Centro de la Raza certainly is a critical partner of ours. The Indian American Community Services Organization, that's the India Association that I mentioned. I couldn't recall their name. Start Zone is somebody we use up at Highline on a very regular basis. World Relief certainly was a huge support to us in our grant process. But there's other organizations too that we have shared with the Port of Seattle. I'm stealing the Port of Seattle's deck on this, just FYI. But there are other organizations. I mentioned, World Relief has been huge, but also, Green River College and Kevin Grossman with the Small Business Assistance Center. Tabor 100 is a Black business chamber of commerce based in Tukwila, who has a lot of members here in Kent. The Kent Chamber, obviously, we work with. And Gaila would be a trusted partner to help us with reaching downtown businesses. So this is not an exhaustive list here. On the right side of this, since I'm borrowing this deck from the port is using what we did with our program as an example as they set this up, not just ours and Shoreline's too, but you'll see how we described the work that we would do with our community-based organizations as they helped us navigate this grant program. We're looking, obviously we're not just talking about grants here. This much more comprehensive as far as the services that we're looking to sort of funnel through this network. But that is an example, it's outreach and marketing support of these different programs. And certainly the translation is part of that. And then being known to the community, being able to promote those people as source of support. And you can see that we're digging into some of the budget assumptions. What is really great from my perspective is that this budget and the navigator metrics and what have you, this is something that Bill and I would not have to do. This would be something that would be managed from the port and the Seattle Metro Chamber, our ADO, our King County Reach organization. When you have, 15 different organizations that you're looking to establish as a community navigator to help businesses, there's a lot of hour tracking and just the paperwork and contracting with these organizations. This is something that by working regionally, we won't have to do this work on a local front. And then I talked about scaling this program too. You can see, the first phase, it might be sort of known as a pilot. You can see down below that the chamber's looking to put $100,000 in, with the Port of Seattle looking at $300,000 contribution. And then each of the cities would then contribute. So we can really help build the capacity of these organizations to provide that critical technical support without stepping all over each other and duplicating our services. One of the things we're looking at right now is the ARPA funding and the state procurement specifics. Just this week, there is this final rule that was just released by the U.S. Treasury on how we can and can't use these ARPA funds. And, there's been questions as to do you have to have a big revenue loss in order to be able to use these funds for this sort of purpose? And I think the preliminary information we have right now is that we absolutely can. We can help support these different organizations with these dollars. And we can also fund a program like this without having to demonstrate a big loss. As I mentioned too, we're looking at the contracting questions and running this on a pilot basis. We are having one of the updates that I that I alluded to earlier. We're actually getting together with the interested cities and the trusted partners that we've identified already to meet on January 18th. So that's one of the pieces that is moving forward along with this final rule on the Treasury and getting these questions. So what we did was we attempted to get a huge grant with the City of Redmond. Bill mentioned this at one of the meetings that we had with you earlier. While we didn't get that grant to set up this network, people thought it was such a great idea to build out something that would be comprehensive and that we'd all be using the same tool. And there's lots of questions. Lots of cities have different questions about it. So we're trying to work with the port and sharing with them how we managed our process, and also with the chamber. I know Bill is on the phone with the Seattle Chamber and the port regularly explaining how we did this work. So it may be a pilot program to start, or depending on how these conversations go, it could have a larger following initially as it gets set up. One of the tools, that this is something that I didn't know when we were speaking before, but we've been doing some research on some technology to help support this. So it's not just a word of mouth thing. There is a program called SourceLink it's a technology that we could populate with our trusted community partners that I shared. I shared with you how we've done this whole directory. We could put that whole directory of business support system and organizations into this SourceLink tool that would be accessible by the partners themselves, by any of you when you're out in the community and somebody needs help. You could utilize this and help direct people to the right place. This is going to be launched statewide later this month. It's not going to cost anything for the cities to utilize it. And part of what it makes this so great is that you see the Washington Economic Development Association, the Chamber, the Chambers of Commerce, the SBDCs, and the Department of Commerce are all looking to use the same tool. So it's already eliminating some confusion as far as what is the right place to send somebody for support. And what's great too is that there's a back-end tracking system. So, maybe 2 years from now we'll be able to say, yes, this was a really great program and we were able to assist XYZ number of businesses and to help them stay afloat with whatever sorts of support they need. But again, this tracking tool is something that I don't have to manage, or Bill doesn't have to manage. It would be done at the state level. But if we're all using it, it's going to be a great support for us. Here's a timeline I mentioned. So here we've been doing a lot of talking about this for the last 3 months, and now here we are in January. I mentioned we're going to have our first meeting with potential partners in other cities on January 19th. So we're moving forward, but you can see we really want to get this set up and ready to launch by summertime. So this is just a little more explanation as to where we're at when it comes to inviting other cities to join the Port and the Seattle Chamber, taking that on. When it comes to us supporting this, I put this in our CAO report, how we're supporting this effort. We're just sharing our contacts with our different organizations here in Kent and how it worked for us, sample contract language, that sort of thing. So that is a little bit more in depth than what I gave you guys before, and I hope that you're excited about it. We're excited to see something be set up that is consistent, and the more people that participate in it, the less likely there will be, another program over here, another program over there. It's very hard for business owners who are English speaking to know where to find the best support they can in the easiest pathway to get there. So I'm hoping that this is going to be a great tool for our region and to support our business community. But if you have questions, I'd love to entertain them and try to answer if I can.
Councilmember Michaud.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Michelle, this is a lot of information. I really appreciate you coming up here and presenting this. My first question is about, it's just a comment. I think it would be really great if there was a way to track the metrics using, by city, to know how many businesses from each city called and used the navigator.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And
I believe that is going to be one of the capabilities with this SourceLink tool. And then the building in with the contracts that each of the navigator organizations, let's just use World Relief, for example, in their reporting, those contracts would, metrics would be required as part of those contracts too.
Right.
So I think that's something everybody has wanted to know is how do we see what's going on in each of our communities? The way the conversations have been going now is absolutely people want to know, and not only in the contract language with those navigators, but also with that SourceLink tool. If somebody, even if somebody finds their way to the SourceLink tool without being referred to it, that would still be able to be tracked.
All right, great. Okay, and then my other question doesn't have anything to do with the network. It was at your first slide. It said King County has somehow managed to track how many businesses have closed.
Yeah.
How do we do that?
This is something, Bill and I, yes, the King County has tracked this. We have a couple of different challenges here. One, our business license system has been tough because not everybody has known that they needed a business license, for one. That's issue number one. The other issue is there's no requirement to fill out a form if you're going to close your business, not even at the state level. So we wonder if it's okay, is it anecdotal, or is it a drive-by? You drive by, oh, that business closed, and then somebody's keeping count. That's one of our challenges right now, is we just don't have a way to see. You can count, all right, XYZ businesses applied for business licenses in 2021. When we get our licenses in for 2022, will we see a difference there?
I just wanted to point out on the slide there, council member, it says 1,000 plus. That's a really good weasel. They're probably estimating how many restaurants and bars. They don't have an exact count, like we don't have an exact count.
Yeah.
I just wanted to point that out. They're estimating because there's other third-party business sources on these things. So when they have a percentage, then they do that percentage by sector type.
Yeah. So just a question to follow up on that, to your comment about what really all we can do is compare how many applications we get the following year. Do we as a committee get a report on that? Because I'm just curious. I think we've maybe talked about it before, but I'd be really interested in seeing at some point, like in January every year or something, if we run the numbers and say this is sort of where we think we're at in Kent.
I think it's a great idea to have a look at that, especially now since we have moved to an online business license system. And I believe our finance department issues the renewal business license process. I believe that begins right now, and then we would get those results back in March, I believe. But yeah, it will be very curious for us to see, and sharing with the committee, I'm sure, would be something we'd be glad to do.
I can just add to that, council member. We track it for downtown. That information, we give that quarterly report to Gaila, for instance, as part of her accreditation. However, citywide, we only have this once a year count right now. We're not able to track it quarterly. Okay. About 7 years ago, one of the IT professionals, Kurt Reiser, who no longer works here, was able to produce the special code for the Kiva system to allow us to track that. I haven't been able to get time for that kind of quarterly update on other different geographies of the city. Although it would be a very good request, and I think if the committee requests it, I think we can put that to IT to track with the new system from File Local.
I think, I'd be happy with yearly, but I think quarterly would be great if we could eventually get to that too.
Yeah. Great. I just want to say, I'm always really proud of the work this department does. It seems like we always set a good example for other cities in the region, and your stuff, like you always do when you come and present to us. And the ability for you to provide feedback, I'm sure, will be very helpful to making this a really exceptional tool. So I know you work hard on this. I know you do too, Bill. So thank you very much for bringing this information. And it'll be great to see where this moves along as far as a pilot program, or, where this timeline will fit in throughout the rest of the year. So looking forward to having you back.
Great, thank you. We will keep you posted.
Okay. Thank you. And then, Kurt, did you want to add something?
Just one quick comment. I think, Madam Chair, you just did a fantastic summary. These two work so hard, and it's not always under the radar. Bill's great about getting his points in there. That's no mystery. But it's a pretty lean team. You start looking at the size, the population of the city of Kent, and the amount of businesses, the amount of dollars that this economic development team has some responsibility over is amazing. It was delicately woven through this presentation. I hadn't seen this presentation because these guys, they're pretty autonomous. They do what they need to do. This presentation, though, throughout, one consistent string that's kind of there that Michelle didn't really throw the spotlights on is the City of Kent Economic Development Team did serve as a model through the pandemic and the granting of literally millions of dollars that other jurisdictions, if not the county, has taken it upon themselves now, kind of partnering and locking arms with the port to really showcase and use as a model for replication elsewhere. I don't want to say the next pandemic. I don't want to say anything like that, but just,
Please
as we endure what's left of this last one, this model is really, Kent's fingerprints are all over it. And it's those two individuals right there that were out there in the region kind of pushing this out. So just want to say thanks, and I know the committee is aware of it, but really just wanted to kind of close with that. So.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. All right, and then the last presentation we heard a little bit about this during council the last Tuesday, but it's the Kent Valley Food Entrepreneurship Center feasibility study results.
Yes, thank you,
Bill.
council member. And yes, I just maybe, if it's not gratuitous, go on top of what Kurt just said and say that basically Michelle wrote a communications plan during COVID-19, and it's had a life for the next 2 years where a lot of other people are looking at it and the results that we were able to get and how do we scale it and grow bigger. And, some of the names are on that slide deck. It's not exhaustive. There will be other Kent groups. We're just trying to be a good citizen and improve the level of service delivery in King County. Also, to pull off of Gaila's last words on the Project Feast cooperation that we're playing a role in with Fair Start and some time from an outside expert who has 20 years experience working for Starbucks and Mod Pizza doing tenant improvements. We're very excited about that. As kind of a baby step of collaboration between Fair Start as it looks to move south and some of the other groups in Kent. And so I think that's a good segue to this first slide. So you may be aware we've had presentations at this committee in the past from the Food Innovation Network and the work that they do in terms of helping BIPOC businesses in the food space catalyze and incubate their business concepts in a very small kitchen right now. It's Spice Bridge, only about 1,000 square feet. Wakalima is another logo up there. That is a group of African farmers that help promote culturally appropriate foods that they grow on unincorporated lands in King County, but have Kent postal addresses. So there are a lot of farms that, like Horseneck Farms, that Living Well Kent, which is another Kent-based organization, is growing foods on different ingredients from around the world. And then also World Relief's been doing that at church parking lots and gardens. I think everyone on this committee is familiar with. And they have also received funding to build more of a kitchen space. Project Feast, I think you're all familiar with, and their kitchen in downtown. So we have a lot of activity in food, I think is just an initial observation here. And you see the lettuce, I think that's lettuce. You can see I'm undermining my ability to talk about food. We've been growing lettuce here in Kent as the former lettuce capital of the world for a long time. So we have a long history in food production. And it's different now, but it's still a very important supply chain and food production role in the region. This is just a sampling, a smattering of the many, many food manufacturers that have been rapidly growing in Kent. So we have the full package. We have distribution, we have food processing, we have food manufacturing. I think we have like 10 different sausage companies, 10 different bakeries. We have beverage distributors. We have chocolate manufacturers. We have companies that specialize on, roasting coffee beans. You might have heard of them, a little roasting plant called Starbucks. So we have the full spectrum from growing to processing and distributing, and that's kind of special, and I just wanted to point that out. And a lot of the names that you might think of as Seattle food brand names, they have facilities in Kent or they're growing in Kent, and so that's a real big trend for some years now. There's been some of these numbers are old, but there have been for years now, maybe 8 years. Every year there seems to be another report saying we're missing one major element in the King County area for a localized food system, and that's co-packing. And there's been study after study about that. And I've been collaborating with King County's local food economy manager more recently because we feel that the opportunity is more ripe to do something about that, and then also sort of lift up some of the other efforts that are already in South King County around food. So we have more than 25% of all food processor licenses are currently in South King County, and by far most of those are in the city of Kent just by virtue of the type of industrial product that we have that businesses want to move to. But cold storage, distribution, and co-packer capacity is where we really see the industrial cluster gap. So we have this great cluster of food companies that build and have synergies off of one another, everything from product development to processing of raw vegetables to distribution of snacks to convenience stores. We have the whole thing, but co-packing can't keep up with the demand. There's also existing cold storage, distribution facilities and so forth, but one of the detriments of having that gap isn't purely the cost of the food at the grocery store. It's for that next generation Oberto, that next generation immigrant food business entrepreneur who wants to scale up their concept. They may have that first contract with PCC, they might have that first contract with Whole Foods, they have the award-winning recipe, but for having something like a co-packing facility, they really can't mature their concept and have it grow to be the great next company with hundreds of employees. It is placing a ceiling on the growth on a lot of our entrepreneurs. So here's a map that so Port of Seattle, good partner of ours, King County, good partner of ours. We came together and we invested in New Venture Advisors, which is a national expert in food hub concepts. They just released, I think the last week of December, their feasibility study that we invested in. And we've been helping tee up interviews. They've been talking to dozens of businesses. They've been talking to dozens of farmers at some of our locations in Kent. We're going to continue to interview farmers and businesses in and around Kent. But we've been going out they have been, we've been teeing up the sort of interviews to these experts, and they've mapped this out. And the full report is available to you in a public folder for you to view. It's 160 pages. These are just the highlights that I wanted to present today. On the left side, you have the needs. So Food Innovation Network, you've heard a presentation from them. What do they need? Co-packing. Who can offer it? Currently today, Fair Start can't. But Fair Start has plans to open a co-packing facility, or an intention to, that they've been trying to look at and examine. And, adult education, technical assistance, business training. Groups like Wakalima and Living Well Kent have described the need for those things. They can get them from the CDFI Business Impact Northwest. They could get them maybe through Highline College. Living Well Kent, Project Feast, the Food Innovation Network, World Relief, Wakalima. These are all groups that need scale-up space for the businesses and groups that they're working with. Who's going to be able to provide that? Well, Business Impact Northwest can maybe provide a loan as a community development financial institution. Culinix is a company in Tukwila that does product development for a lot of different companies, both small and large. And they have employed dozens of food scientists and marketing experts, and they have a really great program and to advise on a private basis. But there's some businesses that aren't quite ready for the services or can't quite afford yet the Culinix service. And so it goes back to those scale-up resources. Where are the storage resources going to come for that business? And again, the co-packing facility that Fair Start is thinking of could do those things. We say Macrina there needs workers. That should be just considered a placeholder for industry at large. It could be one of many. Macrina was just a very good vocal. The founder, Leslie Mackey, was a very vocal stakeholder through the process for the need for workers and the desire to see this be invested in. So job placement, training, workforce opportunities. You might say, well, why is Aerospace Joint Apprenticeship Committee there? AJAC. They've just started a new foods, sort of a mechatronics industry, or what they would call industrial repair apprenticeship placement, and they've been hiring. They've been partnered for years with companies like Trident Seafood and Oberto, but they could be expanding that even further with special food safety classes and other programs that complement sort of the industrial mechanics that go into the manufacturing of food. That's different than the type of job placement that you might be familiar with Fair Start. Fair Start has historically done a lot of culinary training, job placing. They're looking at different types of jobs now around the co-packing, forklift operation perhaps. And then finally, distribution of products. So I mentioned Living Well Kent and Wakalima. There's other farmers. There's many other farmers. These are just checking a couple in the Kent area. Wakalima's on Pack Highway. Living Well Kent, of course, on our East Hill, and operates also farmers markets. They need places to take the food they grow, have it processed, and be able to be in a place where it can be then shipped on and sold. So again, food access, Fair Start, or IRC, which is an aggregator distribution network. I'm not going to read everything on this slide, I promise you, but food is a complicated subject, and I was very impressed with the consultants we had, I have to be honest with you. They've worked on 83 different food hubs nationally, and they really looked at soup to nuts. They looked at the regional landscape, they looked at the agricultural landscape, they looked at people's ability to access food, they looked at how much of that was local, what is the demand, what is the competitive landscape, and buyers, purchasers, they interviewed people who would actually purchase products. What is the minimum size of pallet you would accept before you would be able to purchase from a small entrepreneur? And they really analyzed it. So why an entrepreneurship center, right? So that we've already labeled what in the feasibility study what this could be. We called it the Kent Valley Entrepreneurship Center feasibility study. Well, when you think about entrepreneurship, it is the common denominator that unites all these different aspects of the food system that we're trying to help. And it is a way to have, it has a clear nexus, of course, to our economic and community development goals to have new businesses from diverse backgrounds grow wealth through building their companies. There's clear workforce development nexus around that. But I think the key thing here to key in on is how do we help, because we already have incubator programs. We already have technical assistance programs at Highline and elsewhere. We already have CDFIs who are specialists in the food business area. We have all these different pieces, this constellation pieces, but if you focus on what the entrepreneur needs at every stage of the growth of that entrepreneur, and specifically in scaling up, it gives a common focus to and unites what would otherwise be several different disjointed efforts to improve the food system and improve the economic growth of that. So this is quite an undertaking over the last 4 or 5 months here. This is a list of all the people that we have on the advisory committee. Again, I'm not going to read it all, but it draws from a large, vast array of folks, both community organizations, college members, local institutions like the Port or King County, but also members from like World Relief, Living Well Kent, Project Feast Executive Director, industry voices I think are important. We don't want to be replicating something that a business might be able to do for itself or help out with. And so we've got some findings. So there's several findings here. I'm going to point in on a few. Location is a key factor. That's kind of presumed here when we're talking Kent Valley. But again, I think it's partly to do with our history. It's partly to do with the concentration of companies we have here. And it has to do with the types of service organizations or community organizations. Kent has that full package that really makes a lot of sense for making an investment in this area. We need to have collaborative spaces that focus on scaled production. That's the most strongly desired thing from the interviews that we have done from people working in the food space. And so that's something I think is a key finding. And getting to some of the details here, there's a lot here, I know. But I think what we're really trying to focus on is how do we create a fee structure for access to things like distribution, storage, processing, and scale-up production space that is accessible to the entrepreneur in the Kent Valley. And what are all the equipment needs that would go into that? What are the costs of the equipment needs that would go into that? What is the space needs? Because a lot of times when you talk about trying to make an investment in the food space, people go, oh yeah, there's a kitchen over here. Or have we heard about ghost kitchens? Or isn't there a commercial kitchen? I think what's being envisioned here, I want to impress upon folks, is much larger. We're not just talking about a 1,000-foot kitchen. We're talking about industrially scaled facility to help match the opportunity that we see in our backyard. So they've come up with a model. Here are the major components of space. Commercial kitchen space. I want to distinguish that from food processing space because they're going to look very similar when you look at a photo of each, but they're different. And believe me, I'm so glad we brought in outside consultants because they talk in an acronym soup that I as a government employee, I thought I knew it. I spoke acronym soup, but they have another one. They just rattles off the tongue, QLF, and quick line freeze production space. So commercial kitchen space would be for the processing of crops that can't make their way to, let's say, a PCC shelf or to a local market shelf. My favorite example of this is the carrot that needs the green tops clipped before a grocery store would accept it and put it on a shelf. That's going to take a sink. It's going to take food-safe spaces to a USDA standard, but it's not a full-fledged kitchen with hobs and all the rest. The food processing space is again, it's a degree above what we heard in the presentation from Spicebridge. It's not, they're working in about a 1,600 square foot commercial food space, and they're trying to incubate cohorts of 5 to 10 businesses every few months. But they're all having to share the time on that. And the moment you try to hire another employee for any concept that's doing well, you've exhausted that kitchen space. So having dedicated production spaces is really important to actually taking a concept, not just incubating a restaurant concept or not just incubating a catering concept, but incubating that great new product that's going to be on the shelf of every concession stand at the Port of Seattle's SeaTac Airport, or is going to appear next time you take a flight on Alaska Airlines. We want that Kent Valley business to be able to produce in enough scale that Delta or Alaska Airlines will be, I want to buy local, and I want to put this on every flight coming out of Seattle so everyone rips open XYZ snack product. So that's what the food processing spaces would be. To support that, though, it really takes warehouse, storage, and logistics space, and there's a lot of different public-facing uses for that. One of the most common requests that I get in my job is, can you help me find a warehouse? And that sounds kind of funny because we have 48 million square feet of warehouse. It is extremely hard for community food banks and others sometimes to find warehouse space. The presumption is it's easy because there's a lot of it. The truth of the matter is, as I've talked a lot about at full councils, there is a high demand for that space and it's highly lucrative. And so the amount of it that is able to be used by public other types of uses is very low. Lastly, office, event, retail space, classrooms, training spaces, retail feature spaces. This is the least demand thing, but it's the thing that I think is important to help showcase the rest. So I've talked a little bit about co-packing. Again, for those who might know, I should probably pause and just ask, what we mean by co-packing is taking together, assembling many different products and putting it onto a pallet in sufficient size that a trucking company would find it worth its while to put it amongst their other products and deliver to stores or to restaurants. And just that simple act of aggregation of product onto a pallet is usually, sometimes as people talk about other forms of business incubation, the sort of valley of death comes along when you can't find that next loan, that next piece of capital to match your orders for expansion. And here, it's actually co-packing is sometimes the valley of death. You don't have the sufficient volume order to enable a distributor to think it worthwhile to work with you. Again, co-locating with other groups and trying to share on those things helps to reach the scale necessary to get to that Cisco distribution point. Program extensions and opportunities, and job training placements. So, this would be bringing together a lot of different types of stakeholders, and that's why this has been sort of a complicated but exciting project, because we brought a lot of passionate stakeholders from a diverse array of organizations. Colleges, farmers, co-packers that already exist in the area, distributors. They all have something to say about this. And, I think there's some clear strengths I've been over already about being a culturally diverse community that is already a place that is starting and fomenting different types of recipes into business concepts, and that happens all the time here in Kent. Our weakness, of course, is that, you see the word COVID-19 a lot placed in there. I don't want to focus on that too much, but it's really been that the co-packing component. And our opportunity is usually the mirror image of our weakness or our challenge, which is that the opportunity is if we can have a social agency step into that. And we looked at a lot of different models from across the country, or rather the consultant team did. There's an example of a group in Chicago called CredMade that, was able to charge an extra 6 cents per pallet. Just by charging an extra 6 cents a pallet, they're able to subsidize production spaces. So you can, for the entrepreneurs, and offer job training for folks, for people who might otherwise experience recidivism or other issues. We're actually, they're offering an opportunity for employment. Some of the threats, we're facing just the overall headwinds of the economy, concerns that we always have. There is a supply chain issue we've talked about a lot. And sometimes, trying to get all these different stakeholders under one roof is tricky, although there is a way that we have now worked with the facility designer from the consultant team to show how common hallways could work, how different production spaces could work, and different groups could manage their different aspects without necessarily getting in each other's way. It's kind of the dormitory roommates in college problems that could sometimes occur. Here's a quick look at the different components again. Superficially, these, again, as I noted earlier, they're similar, but it's very important to note the different functions. The commercial kitchen space is different from the production space. They look similar there. You got a lot of stainless steel and hard floors and warehouse space with drains in it that you can easily clean to food standards. Again, if anyone would like to see this report in more detail and go through it, it's actually pretty consumable, and I can make sure that you all have copies of it. I'm just kind of glancing at it today. But one of the reasons for why do a co-location strategy, not just invest in all these separately, is if we're trying to grow the space for those farmers in unincorporated King County that are Kent, and we're also trying to grow the facilities for production spaces for, let's say, the Food Innovation Network, they can share drains, they can share sinks, they just need separated walls and separated kitchen areas. But when you're building out that facility, some of the same tenant improvements could apply to both, and there can be realized facility cost savings, not to mention the near neighborhood creates sort of social synergy and ability to collaborate at the edges of each other's work. Office, event, and retail space, similar story. I think the thing to really note here on the components, though, on the warehouse and storage space, if there's been one message over the last 10 years when food hubs are built, plan on more storage than you think you need, especially cold storage. People typically underestimate that. So a lot of what was produced in the plan that we've presented is really trying to be conservative. So here's an example of some of those activities of what they could look like inside a facility. And so in sum, so we would like to have all case uses and space components. We want to have all the different anchors represented. We want to have a combination of allocated private production space for the anchor tenant. In this case, we believe it might be Fair Start as the co-packer, about 50% of the space. The other 50% of the space would be subdivided between managers from the Food Innovation Network or local community groups, and making sure that we have really strong community compacts so that groups like Living Well Kent and Project Feast and other organizations that already have their feet on the ground in our community, like World Relief, all have access and use of a facility, especially if there is to be public investment in the facility. So about 50,000 square feet. To put that in context for you, the Safeway down the street here on Meeker is about 20,000. Okay, so this is a big facility we're talking about. And the Fair Start component alone would be about 25,000 square feet. There's a lot of ability for this to potentially work with food truck pods or food truck spaces or food truck plazas or work with the farmers markets. You can imagine if you have processing on site for crops, that's an advantage to having a public market or a farmer's market right next to it. So in some of our conversations with Living Well Kent, they've expressed a desire to run farmers markets on the West Hill of Kent. Would it help to have a processing facility in the West Hill of Kent? I think it would. And if you designed it appropriately, those things could have plaza spaces that spill off of the processing. You can wheel it out and wheel it in depending on the time of the week to have sort of a farmer's market kind of working with it, or working with commissary kitchen space. You can lease out these production spaces for food trucks to prepare their food off site before they then wheel it around town, or just set up shop there on special festival days and do the production there. So I think what I'm setting up here is there's a few different things to come next. One is we have a pretty good model financially. I'm going to come back to this one. We have of how much it would cost to build, and I'm going to skip ahead here, and how much it would cost to operate and run. What we don't have right now, and I think we have some more work to do, is identify the funding sources for the different parts of the revenue model and for the construction of the site. And even before that, I think Fair Start and its leadership needs to take back, digest this report. Our stakeholders have to digest this report and make some very difficult choices about site selection. Where's the best places in Kent for this to be? Should it be downtown Kent? Should it be the West Hill of Kent? What are the synergies that are most important to that? Highline College we talked about as being very important program partner. That's on our West Hill. On the other hand, we have a project on Naden that I know beating about the bush. There would be warehouse space as part of that potentially for proposal from a developer. But would you have the same transit access as you might have at the future light link rail coming on the West Hill? Things to think about, and not necessarily our decision alone, because this really does depend upon the anchor tenant, Fair Start, and sort of their ability to invest and run a large piece of it. But there's a lot of stakeholder considerations here, which is the slide I have up now. How are we being inclusive and making sure that the community organizations in Kent have equal access to those components of those spaces that are not direct to the operation of Fair Start, but are kind of hanging off of it because they all have the need for the same storage. They all have the need for the same co-packing. So there's a reason for them to co-locate, but it's not necessarily the driver in that way. So having really good community contracts is an example and a recommendation from the consultant team that has been done in other cities where there's real financial ties and benefits to those organizations, to the lead group. And that's something to consider when we're putting together the financing package that we want to talk about. I think that's the next step for the project too, is to sit now with some of the funding experts in new market tax credits, to sit down with some of the funding experts. There's a lot of discussion of climate change. There's a lot of discussion about grants for climate change. This is a project that frankly has its origins in the local food economy project of King County, which has long thought about its work as being an objective of climate change, working on climate change by relocalizing the food system. So we have some really good information now to digest with our partners, and we're just looking forward to finding that right scale and that right location as we sort of navigate and facilitate these conversations with our community groups. Pause for question.
Questions? Again, another great project that I think sets us ahead of everyone else for what we're doing, the ability to be able to provide for small businesses, training, all of those things right here in Kent, I think is a fabulous idea. So we have this information now. You're kind of talking with partners and different things. Mm-hmm. When can we expect to maybe have something back from you?
Yeah, I would like to continue. I think this is getting more serious at this point, and I frankly, our committee meeting has happened before some of these conversations could happen, frankly. The report hit over the holiday, and while I've gone back and talked to some of these groups, like they need to sit with it a little bit, and I would like to have them come back. There's some deadlines, frankly, that are going to start driving things, I think, in terms of more forceful conversations from them. One, we're owed a proposal from Avenue 55 and the Naden project by March. The other location that was put forward here to look at was the West Hill and the Sound Transit TOD site. So there's more conversation to be had with council on that. What I would like to have happen ideally is in the next few weeks or months is not so much be the progenitor of the timeline, unlike some of the other projects that Michelle, just like the one Michelle had, the nice, beautiful timeline by month. It's not going to come from us necessarily to create that timeline because we're not going to be the lead manager or operator. Our role is more supportive. So I think what I'm talking about with them is how do we continue to play like we played in this project to date, sort of like here's how to understand it, here's how to think about it, here are the local partners, here are their interests. And what I would like to do within this quarter is to have take the financial model that we receive from New Venture and actually understand by funding source those pieces that we might need grants for or revenues for, and then have sort of declarations from Fair Start. I would ideally, like we had the Food Innovation Network present to you last time, I would like to have Fair Start come and present to you. I haven't set on a date on that, council member, but I think at this point it would be for them to come articulate their plans. What we have provided with them is a wealth of information that I think would welcome them into our community and build out the connections. I do think there will be opportunities, I can't forecast exactly when, where council will have maybe a good quality choice about where to invest, and I hope to have that this year.
Thank you. All right, any other questions or comments?
No other comments? Okay.
All right, thank you so much. Looks like that brings us to the end of our agenda. So thank you everyone for joining us. We are adjourned.